if you're going to be on the roller coaster of life, tick, 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 and when you finally go down, are your two hands up in the air going, woo, like screaming, or are your eyes closed and you're clutching? Either way, that roller coaster is going. Hi, I'm Dave Tina.
And I'm Angie Tina.
Welcome to the 10-Year Marriage Podcast.
On this podcast, we answer the question, what if your marriage came with a 10-year contract?
How would you show up if there was a deadline in your relationship? What would your life look like in the future? And how would you recommit every day?
Come with us on this journey as we navigate as partners, entrepreneurs, and parents in this big life we've created.
So there's this thing I do when I coach. It's called the health check. It's physical, mental, emotional, and financial health. And so when I get to the mental one, which is like your spiritual health, and it's really your purpose, your relationship with yourself, I make them, whoever I'm coaching, rank or where they're at from 1 to 10. You can't give yourself a 7, right? It's a cop-out. But the reason why I'm bringing this up, I always ask if there's anyone in the room that's at a 5 or below. Because if you're at a 5 or below in the relationship with yourself, then we got to talk immediately. Because something isn't right. Like if they're in a deep, dark, isolated space with themselves, like I'll almost like stop the class and go talk to them, because that's where I get concerned that they may do something to themselves or that they can't take back.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the start to this episode of what we're going to be talking about. So this one isn't necessarily for the faint of heart, but it's something
definitely
that...
a heavy topic.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's heavy. And there is an epidemic right now of loneliness. People feel alone. And it isn't necessarily a lonely... You could feel very alone in a room full of people. You could feel very alone in being married and have kids. It manifests in so many different ways.
Yeah. You could feel alone with 1 million followers.
Very alone. Yes. And so one of the reasons why this episode has come about is there have been 4 separate instances in the last 8 months where people who are either 1 person removed or 2 people removed or right up close went below that line and felt like there was no way out other than just making it permanent. And so while this conversation is about your mental health and how you bring that into your relationship and your marriage, it's also a wake-up call or a conversation to tell people they're not alone. And if you need to talk to somebody, go talk to somebody. The most recent one, for instance, was a person in our industry who was beloved. And put themselves in a position that they felt like they could not get out of. And what's crazy is when this happened, this is probably a gross generalization. Usually people you think that are really happy.
Yeah. I think that there are absolutely signs, but I don't think that there's this stereotypical thing that people have. I mean, even think about the famous people that have done it, some of them are the happiest, or they're the comedians.
Like a Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you think like they're happy and they're laughing and they're smiling and they have good energy about them, but they're in a really dark place.
And in this situation, this wasn't like, oh, someone passed away and did something and we're just going to say something nice. This was like people genuinely feeling like seen and touched and felt and like heard and like connected to this human. I was like, the saddest thing about this whole thing, other than him no longer being with us, is that he didn't get to experience and truly know how everyone felt about him. Like if he would have got a fraction of that feeling, there's just no way it would have happened. And I feel like that, with the case with our buddy in our group, right? The person who did events for us, the person from back home, and just out of pure respect for families, we're not going to mention names, but it's like if they only knew.
Yeah.
It's almost like the ones like the psychos like me who are always freaking out about everything are the ones that you would think, but never would. It's the ones that are like burying it.
Yeah. And maybe you can never say never, right? Like I think people deal with mental health at some point in their life where they're going through the ups and downs, and mine was as a teenager, but I think most people have dealt with it either themselves or with very close people in their family or really close friends at some level and to some extent. This isn't something that doesn't touch everyone at some point in their life, and we're talking about adults today, and it's a whole nother episode when we talk about kids.
That's right. I didn't even think about it with our daughter.
Yeah, our kids are really experiencing
their friends and the people and the hotlines, and especially with what's wild is, and I don't know the statistics, maybe you have them, more so with young girls and older men.
Yes. So we'll talk about young girls at a different point, because there's a book I'm reading right now called The Anxious Generation. And it's talking about how as parents and in this generation, we're overprotecting in reality in real life, and we're underprotecting in social media and on the internet and things like that. And it's talking about how that affects mainly girls between the ages of like 11 and 15, and how there's this astronomical amount of kids and people in high school, middle school, high school, and college that are having either thoughts of it or depression or are harming themselves some way, shape, or form. It's in their life, and it's really affecting the mental health of these kids. And so that, I think, is a whole nother topic we need to have.
I think it's all connected, right? And you're talking about this, like I've never in my entire life even come close to hurting myself. I just like punishing and suffering instead. Right. I'm not even a panic attack guy, although I've had them, but like hyperventilating, like, no, like I'm like just worry, anxiety. It's like almost like chronic, right? Ups and downs with that. I've been pretty open about this. I don't think, and maybe this is my justification, every mentor I've had from, like, if you read Tony Robbins' book, like the Life Force one, his first chapter is about having severe anxiety and hypochondria about things he can't control. My coach talks about it all the time. And when you're in a growth cycle and you have that entrepreneur and that seeker way, it's just part of the game. It's important to talk about for many different reasons, but it also is when you're in a relationship. Like for instance, when I have anxiety, it triggers us in so many ways. I'm already in my head, like battling my demons. I'm not showing up in a masculine way. You're getting angry at me because it's triggering you of things of your past. And so then I'm getting triggered, like this woman isn't even showing up for me. Right? And so we go down like I'm already in a prison in my brain when I'm dealing with it. You become it, and then we unravel. So then, like, even though you're dealing with it in your own moment, right, the other person is dealing with it too. It's the energy of the whole relationship, the presence. Like, your kids can tell when you're showing up a certain way. You can't hide it. Like, there's just like a different layer. And this isn't like 20%, 30. This is 100% of human beings. This is the human experience. Every single human that has ever lived has experienced some level of panic, stress, anxiety in their life. People deal with it in different ways. Some people bury it. Some people, a whole world needs to know. Yeah. And usually in a relationship, there's one of each. Exactly. Totally. Well, I want to read this statistic because I find it really interesting. But the rate among males is approximately 4 times higher than that of females. So you want to know why? It's because the aggressive way of which a male will do it. Males do it in 2 ways. Let's just say rope and bullet. And those are harder to recover from. Right. Whereas women, it's more like a pill. Yeah, but do you think... That's a statistic that I've actually read. Okay. But in addition to that, do you think that it's also because a lot of the times, maybe in traditional roles, the masculine is the one that kind of buries things, and the feminine is the one that voices and communicates? Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I think for all of the conversation of like what a traditional male role is, I think the masculine energy is a provider one. And I think whether or not women are arising and taking on masculine energy, the male, I believe, is judging themselves on what my coach likes to say, getting paid and laid, right? And so they want to feel like the provider. So if they are providing, they're feeling the stress of providing. If they're not providing, they're feeling the stress of not providing. If the woman's providing, they're feeling the stress of not showing up as a man. I just think that a man's going to put a lot of pressure. So like, as great as it is to be in patriarchy, this is part of it that's not talked about enough. That's the other side of it. Mm-hmm. And I think women are finding out that's not all what it's cracked up to be either, that extra pressure as well. Mm-hmm. Like we all agree on that. So that's why I think though with kids, the energy of a boy hasn't hit that like toxic part. There's still just there's this masculinity, there's this energy, like there's just, your boys being boys, but in the best sense.
Yeah.
Whereas girls mature quicker. And when they're hitting puberty and they start dealing with that stuff, I mean, we're seeing it with our own daughters.
Yeah, they're already judging themselves at such a young age.
And
I mean, I feel like males versus females, women have more of a sense of community, right? They're involved with their friends. They go on girls' trips. They do book club. They try to be active, and they have people that surround them. They don't feel alone. And a lot of men, I think, isolate themselves.
Yeah, you girls could go dance at a club and do these girls' trips, and it's great. And males, like, I'm not a big golfer. Mm-hmm. I don't really drink a lot. Like, that's pretty much a guy's trip. I mean, me and Austin talk about going on like a, retreat that's similar to a feminine retreat, like with cold plunging and, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then another group of males would be like, oh, nice gay guys trip. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we'd be dealing with. Mm-hmm. Women are much better at community.
Yeah.
1,000%.
And I think that has something to do with it, because the isolation and the alone factor, I think, is number one. People feel alone. They feel they isolate themselves. They feel isolated. That's one of the biggest reasons why, when we came up with this concept of the 10-year marriage, why it was so important to us, is because we were like, we don't want couples to feel like they're the only ones dealing with these things, that they're the only ones dealing with problems, and that they're having these conversations, these arguments, whatever it may be. Like, it's normal to have those things.
Well, women are also more willing to have real conversations with each other, I think.
Yeah.
That barrier has been broken a lot more. Mm-hmm. There's also been an overcorrection. I think if you talk too much about it, you start manifesting. I think there's too much therapy.
Yeah.
There's, but I don't think we've gotten there. There's still like, for lack of a better term, a dick measuring contest with men, and there's still that game. Mm-hmm. I think people are now, especially men, are finally realizing that being open and being vulnerable and connecting at a deeper level and being truthful is one of the most powerful ways you can show up. It's godly, it's connected to source, it's great energy. But on the flip side, if you're a man and you do too much with that, the woman still, the female energy still wants the man to be the man and not be crying all the time. So you got to find a balance in that game, right? And so there's a balance between burying it. There's been times I've freaked out so much that I can't stop obsessing about it and I can't stop talking about it. And you're like, chill out. And then there's been times I've gone completely internal and you're yelling at me for not talking. And I'm like, finally, I was like, if I talk too much, you don't want to hear it. And if I don't talk enough, you're asking me what's going wrong and I'm not present. So that is one of the difficult things for a grown man to deal with it, because it's just a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And there is sometimes, I mean, this is just me being self-aware, but there are times where you're feeling this anxiety and I almost go in attack mode because I'm going, I don't want to have to carry this all.
Yep.
Like, I don't want to have to do all of these things, because now you're completely retreating. You're checked out. You're not even registering what's happening in our life. And I'm going, I don't want to handle all this by myself. And I'm going, let's snap out of it quickly. And I can see how, in relationships, that dynamic could become really toxic if those people don't end up having the conversation and come to an agreement. Because if it just continues to go, I mean, we would have much bigger issues.
Of course.
Right? If it just continued and lingered and we just didn't address these things, or we didn't seek out help. And we've been in moments where we're like, all right, we got to go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And individually as well, And so.
Well, it goes back almost to the attachment styles that we talked about in our first episode. It's not necessarily that you're like anxious or avoidant in a relationship with the other person. You're almost anxious and avoidant in the relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
So you got to like get secure with yourself to have a secure relationship. Because if you're anxious with yourself, you're going to be anxious with the other person. If you're avoidant with yourself, you're going to be avoidant with the other person. If you exhibit both, then you're this like I hate to admit, like I can go bipolar with this. I could be like 10 and 1 on the scale.
Right.
And then that's even more confusing for a lot of people because it's unpredictable. So listen, every single game we talk about, whether it's money, mental health, body, all of it, it all starts with 2 things. Your relationship with you first. Then if you want to make it spiritual, your relationship with your soul, with God, with source, right?
Yep.
Like what you're bringing from a presence and a spirituality, right, to the relationship.
Yeah, and that's the saddest part is because the situations that we're talking about with what we know, it had a lot to do with external influences, right? Or external situations.
It seemed like all 4 was relationships.
Yeah.
And if I'd say the closest we got to divorce was off of this spot. You know, we went to Thailand. As I've gotten older, I've had an issue with traveling, especially to places I don't feel comfortable with. Now, the more I've talked about this, the more I've realized that I'm not the only one. And even you've gotten weirder about flying as you've gotten older, right? You evolve. And so we're taking this flight over the Pacific Ocean. You know, in your brain, you're like, well, I guess we're committed,
Yeah.
right?
Talk about all in.
We're going to Southeast Asia, which for me at the time was like the most unknown place I could possibly go. Europe, good to go. Australia, if we went, you know, Southeast Asia was like, I think it's people who never go, they go there in their entire life.
Yeah.
Right? It is a culture shock. And this was before the pandemic. And we're going through customs in all these places, and they're like live birds. And if you think you got bird flu, like it was like, where the hell am I? Then I let this mosquito malaria thing kind of get into my brain before I even got there. So it wasn't that was the issue. It was all of these things kind of stacking upon stacking. We were in Chiang Mai, I was okay. The minute we got to Phuket, I fell apart. In a normal relationship, I probably could have handled it better. If we had had the kids on the trip, I would have been better. If we would have had other couples on the trip, I would have been better. It's just wild. Like I fly better when you know what I mean? Like this is what happens. And so, yeah, I lost my mind. I felt trapped. And then you, instead of like, and this is where it gets hairy. Do you enable? Or do you fight?
Yep.
And you fought.
I did.
And your issue was you couldn't relax on a day-to-day basis. You couldn't give yourself any space. And that you, in your brain, the only time you're allowed to let loose and relax is on vacation. So now both of our mental health states collided in
big time.
huge.
Yeah. And
as I made us leave Phuket, could not get out, then spent a couple of days in Singapore, and then back we went.
And I was like, are we going back? And you're like, no. I'm like,
yeah. I know you were.
I think I cried more on that trip than I think I've ever cried in my whole life.
I thought there was a chance we were getting divorced.
Yeah.
So mental health plays a game. Now, that could have been the self-death of not ourselves, but of our marriage based on mental health. Everything was at stake. Our kids, our business, all of it, because of the way we handle our own mental emotions.
Yeah.
It's heavy.
It's very heavy. And I think that, there's so few people. I come from a place and a background of people that hold a lot in, and we have a lot of
stoicism.
Yeah, but we also have a lot of the internalizers and what's the word? The avoidant mentality as far as conflict resolution. And I think that...
You think it's a cultural thing? I
think a little bit, yeah. I think a little bit has to do with culture. I think a little bit has to do with pride and ego and like, my life should look like this. And if you're looking into the world of should and it doesn't meet that expectation, you feel less than, you feel unworthy of something. And mental health is such an interesting game because even yesterday I was at the Hoover Dam and I'm looking down and the kids are like, oh my gosh, would you die if you jumped? I'm like, of course you would. It's like, God only knows how many feet. And they're like, no, but if you dove, like you could. And I was like, we're not even going to try it. We're not going to talk about it. But I had a glimpse, like a very small second glimpse of being like, what would it feel like if I stood on this ledge? And not that I have those feelings and I love my life and all these things. And not that it was even like a negative thought or anything, but just the fact that I could let my mind get to that point to where I almost scared myself.
Yep.
To where I was like, oh my God. Like, and all of a sudden it became real. And I was like, if I stood on this ledge and I took one step, it all ends. Like, it's done. And I'm like, to get to that point mentally, just to get like, and I don't know if we'll ever know unless we talk to people that have actually had these experiences. And I've seen
There's
interviews.
Great things people have tried to like jump off thing and survived or shot.
But like, is there a moment of regret? Is there like,
I think there is in every single time.
But it's mental health is so powerful because it's like, I feel very secure. I'm very happy in my life. There's no, I don't have a lot of anxiety. I don't have those things. But just the fact that I could in that one moment have that, like, that'd be interesting. You know what I mean? Imagine if I was in a dark place. Like, every time the girls are like in a bad place mentally, I'm like, listen, it's nothing will last like this forever. And I keep trying to tell them that, like, because when I was a teenager and I was feeling those things, that's what my thought process was. It was, life is never going to be the same and it's never going to get good again. This is the worst. It's going to always be bad. I think it's just important to talk about, like, when we were at those celebrations of life and things, at one of them, mental health was mentioned. The other ones, they weren't. And it's like, this is a conversation that we need to have with our kids, with each other.
Yeah, they hide. And sometimes talking about it too much can normalize it too much too, right? With our daughter, like, the fact that we're having these conversations already with it. And like, half of me is like, I'm glad that they're not head in the sand, but the other half is like sad that we're even having it and that's even an option on the table. But I get what you're saying. Like, when you were talking about looking down at the dam, I'm not a big gun guy. I just happen to accumulate a couple of guns. And every time I'm in a dark, dark place, I'm very aware that the guns are in the house. I always say, if someone said I took my own life or I died of like not eating, like anorexia or bulimia, investigate. Because those two ways I'm not going, right? But even then, when you're in a dark place and you feel alone and you feel not seen and I'm having an argument, I can't talk to you, right? Because I'm like, it's a double-edged sword talking to you because we're going to end up getting in a fight and I'm going to feel shame and guilt and all those things that I'm already feeling, right? You start going like, almost like, if I take it to that level, someone will take me seriously. You know what I mean?
Yep. Or I'll get somebody's attention.
Exactly. And
I'll feel seen. I'll feel heard.
Yes.
Something like that. Yeah.
And so what's ironic is when people try to avoid the things that they think trigger this anxiety, like growth, expansion, taking risks, all the things that are like, there's no growth in life without some pain or some uncomfortability, right? So you could trick yourself and to be like, I'll just stay put to protect myself from dealing with that, which inevitably leads you right back into that same pit. So I'm just hunting down, for me, a more of an acceptance and less of a struggle and more faith through the growth, more grace through the dark, because the darkness has to exist. The goal isn't to get rid of the darkness of our lives. It's just, how do we deal with the dark? If you're going to be on the roller coaster of life, you're on a roller coaster and you're in the dark, tick, 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 tick. And when you finally go down, are your two hands up in the air going, woo, like screaming, or are your eyes closed and you're clutching? Either way, that roller coaster is going. And you could choose the experience you're going to have.
And it goes back, I mean, there's so many resources and so many things. And I think that every time we put ourselves in an environment, whether it's coaching, whether it's a seminar, whether it's something, somehow mental health comes up, or this conversation of the relationship with yourself and everything. And Tony Robbins actually talks a lot about the physiology of it, because he's done really crazy work with this.
He always talks about it's 80% psychology, 20% action, right? It's all. Every time I teach the 4 domains, this is the one, right? Obviously, the physical domain
this is the main domino.
The one, depending upon what you believe, that transcends it all is this part, that relationship with yourself, your soul. This is the one. Because if you believe your future is bigger than your past, then there's no way you would ever get into a point where you can follow through with doing something so final. What is interesting, 3 out of the 4 situations, I believe, were based through either divorce, emotional affairs, something as stupid as an argument. A lot of the times it comes back to your relationships.
Yeah.
Which means you're externalizing your value, you're externalizing all that.
And your self-worth, yeah.
It's really sad when you think about, like, especially having kids, and you see them from going of like no fear, no weird thoughts. Like, they live so much in the present, because this is where, like, regret lives in the past, anxiety lives in the future. This is the what if, should have, whatever, right? Whereas really being in the flow state, the God state, kids embody that.
It comes back to the life is happening for you, not to you situation. If these people thought, like, even if they were in a bad argument, conversation, relationship, whatever it was, and they were like, this is not happening to me but for me in any way.
Yeah, but I look at that as unwavering faith.
Yeah.
And unwavering faith sounds so good on the surface.
Yeah, but it's
it
hard.
Is very hard to actually live. Because you have to be, unwavering faith is great when things are going well, but when you get that one phone call, it's very hard to be like, why this is happening for a reason that I don't understand, and I have to have faith in it.
And that's it. I think it comes back to a lot of just being involved with a community and having people to talk to. And there's so many different things that you and I deal with just on a day-to-day basis, where I can talk to my groups of friends or my coaching or whoever I'm surrounding myself with, and you otherwise, because having that outlet is so important. And I just don't think a lot of people do.
Let's talk about 2 things right off the bat that work when you're feeling super anxious or alone or overwhelmed or having a panic attack.
Yeah. So what are your 2 things?
So one is and I never do it right, but it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's the senses, right? And someone is like just irrational and you can't even talk to them. You're like, right off the bat, just what are 5 things you see? And it's just a pattern interrupt, right? Well, I see the couch and I see you and I see the camera, right? Yep. And then what are 4 things you could hear? Like, I could hear my own voice. I could hear my heart beating. I could hear the air conditioning. I could hear a car going by, right? And it's just, you're getting back into your body and your senses. What are 3 things you could touch? What are 2 things you could smell? What is 1 thing you can taste? And it's just a grounding experience.
Yep.
I did it with Gigi last night when she was freaking out about
her toe.
So that's one. The second one was walking, number 1, preferably outside, number 2, and in nature, number 3. That's the trifecta.
Yep.
Right? I didn't realize when I lost all that weight how much of a spiritual game this was just with all the walking I was doing.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing it with another human being, right? The Italians do this, right? They call it passeggiata fare, right? Like, it's like go for a walk and talk, right? Walking after they eat. Like, these little simple things, right? And then the third one, breath work. And there's box breathing. There's like, what is it? Breathe in for 3. Breathe out for 6. Hold for 9. And do it again. But these are just 3 simple ones.
Yeah. I have one even more simple one.
Go for it.
Think of 1 thing you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Gratitude and fear can't coexist. So
Sure.
You think of 1 thing you're grateful for. I mean, I just got in the bed with Gigi this morning and was like looking at her face, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so grateful, And that changes everything.
So there was another one I heard, like, if you're going to look into the future, it takes the same delusion to have the fear in the future and the faith in the future. It's just which one you convince yourself of, right? Now, when you're in it, none of these may work. I mean, sometimes you got to outwalk your brain.
Yeah.
Like I remember you used to say to me, I could tell the days you walked and the days you didn't.
It's your morning hour of power, right? It's going to affect the rest of your day.
So as we wrap up this very important, heavy topic, the main thing is if you are in a really dark spot and you feel alone and you are like out of a 10 in that 5 category, just talk to somebody, reach out. Don't be fearful of being judged. I guarantee you, I promise you, everyone has had feelings like this before. The worst thing you can do in this situation is isolate even further. Connect to somebody. They will be there and appreciate you did. On another level, putting the work in and leaning into this is such a payoff because the more time you spend in the darkness, getting comfortable with it, facing the fears, the deeper you go in this, the more you will accelerate out. This isn't pain just for the sake of pain. This has a paradise. This has a payoff that is worth the work.